Hey guys, Julian here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make chill minimal house in the style of Ricardo Villalobos. So, as usual, you get the project file and the samples from this video in the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check that because they'll be available shortly. And yeah, let's get started. So before I show you everything, I want to just talk a little bit about what I mean by sort of like chill minimal house. So I feel like Ricardo Villalobos and many other minimal house producers as well does a really good job of taking like, you know, kind of like the house feel and that kind of groove that you get when you have a house song, but making it a little bit more chill. Like it's a little bit more laid back. Like this track, for example. Like, think about if you took that and dropped that in the middle of some super high energy, intense tech house mix. Like, it would not work, but that's okay. It's just that this is a different style. But of course, yeah. So that's kind of what I want to be showing you how to do in this video. So the first thing we have here is this bass, which sounds like this. This is a pretty standard minimal style bass line. Basically, it's just playing G, and then it goes down to C, which is, yeah, so C, G is just the fifth of C. We're in the key of G minor. And then that's what it's doing. Again, it's a pretty simple bass line. It's just like these little bass stabs. And then for the sound, we have this. So I made this using operator. Basically, actually, all this is just two sine waves doing some FM. It's really simple. And with this, you know, this goes back to what I was saying with making it more chill. Is like, you're not so much going for like having a super strong, powerful bass, as you are just kind of like, you know, getting a nice sound like this, and then just letting it breathe in the track. Like everything else kind of fits around this in a way where you get that groove of the bass line underneath all this other stuff that's going on. So that is it for the bass. The next thing we have here is this kick, which sounds like this. And so it's pretty simple. It's just kind of like this short, kind of punchy kick. It's not too like slamming, but it just hits the right amount. And then I've got a little bit of envelope on this, or I've used the envelope a little bit to kind of shape it. You can see, oops, I've the amp envelope. Pretty simple stuff there. After that, we just got this drum bass. You can see I've got the drive up a little bit, I've got the crunch up a little bit, and then I've got a little bit of boom. And then the boom is tuned to G. We're in G minor, like I said. Pretty simple stuff there. But you can hear this works really well with the bass. And there's another thing too, like with house music, of course I talk about this a lot, but like getting the bass and kick to work really well together and to groove really well together is the key to getting your track to work. Like if you listen to this, you get the full groove from that, and if we add all this other stuff in, it's extra, and it definitely helps, but the original groove is still this. And so yeah, that just kind of is like for both of these, like just trying to get the kick and the bass to work together really well, I think is key, without doing too much crazy stuff. So the next sound we have here is a stab, which sounds like this. So basically what this is doing is it's playing this G minor chord, and then I've got a G, or an A up there, excuse me. I've got an A up here, and then the A is just, yeah, you can see that is just like one note below the minor third. It's subtle. You don't really hear it as much with this resonator. If I turn that off, yeah, you can hear it. It just kind of adds a little bit of like chaoticness, so to speak, in the high end there. If I turn this off, or let's say we just tune it to G, it's not really like having that same relationship as an A is. So, you know, it's just doing stuff like that to make it a little bit more interesting and a little bit different sounding, and not just like kind of like a basic G minor chord stab. So then on there, what I did was I made the sound using analog. You can see we've got a square wave and a saw wave. I've got them at basically the square wave is 2 octaves down from the saw wave. I've got those going into a low pass filter. You can see I've got the envelope on there. That's what's giving it this kind of pluck. And then we got the amp envelope just set default, like a plucky kind of sound. And the last thing we have inside of analog here is just a bit of vibrato. You can see I've got it up pretty high. There's like all the way, but yeah, so pretty high, and it's pretty fast. You know, again, we're trying to give this a little bit of a different feel. Like, we want this to, you know, we want to get away from, like, the basic, really dry kind of synth sound with this. And then the last thing I have on there is just a bit of unison, just to make it a bit bigger sounding. After that, I have the resonator. And so what Ableton's resonator does, if you don't know, is basically adds this kind of, like, a metallic sort of resonation over top of all your sounds. And what you can do is you can use this to kind of add, like, this cool almost like membrane kind of sound to your sounds. Like it sounds more like the way I would see like a drum kind of working, if that makes any sense. Where you kind of hit it and it rings out a little bit more. And again, it also is just a good way to give it like a different feel. You know, it's like if we have this, it's just very much like a synth sound. It doesn't really have a whole lot to it, but this is a little bit more interesting. So what I've got here is I've just got this tuned to a G minor chord. You can see I got the filter on. It's on a bandpass, so that's just filtering the resonation. I got the decay up there. We're on mode A, and then I've got this set to G, and then I've got 2 minor thirds here, 3, 3, and then I've got a 5th here, 7, and then I've got an octave, so 12. And then what we've got is we just got the dry wet down a bit, because you can hear there's all the way up, which that sounds kind of cool as well. But yeah, just turning it down allows you to kind of blend in the right amount. After that, I've got a bit of chorus. You can see it's set like this. We got the dry wet at 23%. Then we just have a bit of echo on 8th notes to give it some space. And then finally just an EQ8 cutting at the low end. So the next thing I have here are these little zap sounds, which sounds like this, or which sound like this. So I got a lot of requests on how to make these, and I want to show you guys how to do it. I made both of these using operators. So this first one, what it is it sounds like this. And it's actually really simple. It's just a really short sine wave. You can see I shortened the sustain and decay on the envelope, and then we just got a little bit of a pitch envelope on that. And that's what's giving it the sort of like zap. I turn off the pitch envelope. So yeah, pretty simple. To get these kind of more minimal zaps, I just recommend, like I said, using a really short like volume envelope like this. Like if I turn this up, it already kind of doesn't have that feel. But having it just be that little kind of quiet thing in the background really helps. And then here's the programming on that one. You can see it's just playing like this. Pretty simple. It's just kind of fitting into the groove and helping with the percussion. The next one we have here is this one. And so I made this one a very similar way. You can see we've just got a square wave inside of operator with this one. I've got a really short envelope on that. I got that going through a filter with an envelope on it. So you can hear that's kind of giving it that like resonant sound. If I turn that off, it just sounds very like dry square wavy. Versus this sounding a little bit more like vintage and cool. And then we just got a bit of a pitch envelope on there. So that's doing that. And then this is playing a little bit more sparsely. It's just doing this little da-da-da every 2 bars. So then for effects on here, I just have an EQ8 doing dotted 8th notes. Since this one is so sparse, there's more room to let it ring out. And then I have an EQ8 cutting at the low end. And that is it for the zaps. The next thing we have here is this main chord stab, which sounds like this. So the way I made this was, I'll show you the notes here, it's just doing a G minor chord. And then the second time it just plays the root note and the 5th. And then the third, this note, A sharp, just comes in like a half, or yeah, like an 8th note later. Like that. You know, it's just kind of a nice way to give it a bit of a different feel. Ricardo Villalobos uses these kind of like ambient chords a lot in his tracks. And it gives it a more chill vibe too. Like, listen to this without it. And then with it. It really helps to set that kind of atmosphere like you hear in a lot of his and many other minimal house producers' tracks. So for the sound on this one, I made it using operator. It's a pretty simple like FM kind of sound. Basically, we just got a sine wave, another sine wave, and another sine wave. Doing a bunch of FM, you can see they're all in the same octave. I've got the envelope on the first one set like this, and then those have this LFO on them. And so the LFO, you can see I've got the amount pretty, not that much. It's just 7.1%, and then I've got the rate up pretty high, and that's what's giving it that cool kind of vibrato sound. Here's without it, or here's with it. And then without it. So you can hear it helps to give it a more interesting, kind of cool, like organ type of texture. After that, we have this echo, which you can see is just doing dotted quarter notes. There's a lot of space in between the notes with this one, so there's a lot of room to play around with echo. And then the last thing I have on there is just a reverb, just giving it some reverb. And that's really it for that chord step. Like I said, this one is a lot more important than you would think for kind of setting the atmosphere. Next thing I have here is this click, or are these clicks, whatever you want to say. They sound like this. And so the way I made these was using operator. What we've got here is we've got some white noise with a really short envelope on it on the volume, and then we've got that going into a bandpass filter, and the bandpass filter has a bit of an envelope on it as well. And if I turn off all the effects, you can hear this is what this sounded like originally. So it's just like a pretty straightforward kind of like white noise bandpass click, almost like a hi-hat kind of sound. And then the effects are what make it. So the first thing I have on here is this chorus, which sounds like this. So you can hear this is really taking it and giving it a cool texture. I have the rate up a lot. And you can hear it's making it sound a little bit almost more like watery. I guess is the way I would put it, like, yeah, it just gives it that cool texture. After that, I've got this cabinet, which sounds like this. So this is kind of taking it and making it sound a bit darker. You can hear pretty simple stuff. This is just Ableton's cabinet. It's a little bit quieter, but the stuff that we do after this really helps with that. So then after that, I've got an echo doing dotted eighth notes. So this is giving it that space that you hear. And the last thing that we have on here before the EQ8 is just an amp, which sounds like this. And this is what really brings it out. Here's without it. It sounds very dry and clean, but with it, it gives it that cool kind of texture. And then I just have an EQ8 cutting at the low end, just to make room for it. But yeah, this is pretty simple, but definitely making like more fluid percussion with synths like this. It's definitely like a really good way to go with minimal house. Like a lot of producers, like I said, Ricardo Villalobos and many others do this, where they'll make like some kind of a percussion sound with a synth, and then like find ways to just make it sound almost like audio. So the next thing that we have here are these two hi-hats, which sound like this. So basically, we just have two really small hi-hats. We've got this one. I'll show you the original sample. This one, which you can hear. I just took it here and I shortened it with the amplitude envelope. This is something I've heard a lot. This is like a 909 style hi-hat. And I've heard Ricardo Villalobos use this kind of sample specifically, like a 909, and just shorten it a bunch with the envelope on your sampler. Until you get that kind of like really tight, really like minimal house kind of sound. And you'll hear too, like if you take off the envelope, it's kind of too much. Like it really just sticks out like a sore thumb. And then for the second one, we have this one. So the first one was playing on the upbeats, just really straight. I think this one is just really kind of in the background, but it's just playing these little like sounds. Or these little like extra kind of percussive ones. You can see it's panned a little bit to the right ear. I don't mind that. Gives it a nicer stereo image. I wouldn't have thought to do it myself. But yeah, then with this one, I pitched it up +5, and then I shortened it with the amplitude envelope. Here's the original sound. And then I tried to make it a little bit smaller so it would fit into the mix a little bit better. After that, I have this clap, which is 2 layers and sounds like this. So we've got this clap, and then this one. And so what we got going on here is the first one is made by taking this clap, kind of like a bigger, more like hand clap style sound, more organic sounding, and I've just shortened it with the amplitude envelope. As you can see, being able to work with amplitude envelopes and drum samples is very important for this style. But yeah, I just kind of shortened it, and this is meant to be more of like an organic layer, and then this one is meant to be more like cracky. So then on this one, I've got this clap, kind of like an 808 style clap. And I've just shortened this one with the amplitude envelope as well. And then when you put them together, you get kind of like that nice, kind of smoother sound of this one, and then the cracky sound of this one, and they combine to do something you couldn't get with one of them on its own. So there's also this little thing, that little, just kind of something, you know, that gives it a little bit more groove. It makes it a little bit more interesting at the end of every 4 bars there. And yeah, so the last thing that we have in here is just this vinyl noise, which sounds like this. And it's pretty simple. It's just some vinyl noise, like from a record. I'm just kind of playing in the background. It's definitely pretty important. Something I've noticed with not just Ricardo Villalobos style, but a lot of these kind of like more chill, minimal house producers, is they'll have like some kind of noise in the background. Like sometimes it'll even be something a bit heavier than this, like some industrial noise or something like that. But I mean, something like this really helps to give it a more organic and kind of like human feel. You can hear when I take it out, it's very dry sounding. But when I add it, yeah, it gives it more of like an organic kind of feel. So that's pretty much it for this one, guys. I just want to show you some techniques on how to make chill minimal house. So that's me for today, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to know what you think of this video in the comments, and make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And you can also hit that little notification bell next to the subscribe button to find out when every time I drop a new video. Yeah, make sure you can get the project file and the samples from this video in the description. So make sure to check that out. And if you're a patron on my Patreon, check that because they'll be available shortly. Thank you so much, everybody, and I'll see you tomorrow with another video.